Concerning application in critical and creative thinking, in other words, how do we apply critical and creative thinking? Has anybody applied it in life and succeeded? Or is it a theoretical work from philosophy that is just for academicians in the library, in the academic arena? Where does this subject help us? Or how is it applied? We shall summarize some of the key characters. John Stuart Mill. We shall also look at other characters like René Descartes, Bertrand Russell. We shall also look at a few others like not just René Descartes, I've mentioned him. We shall look at this other gentleman, the Kenyan, not the Kenyan, the Ghanaian, the man you call Kwasi Wirendu, a Ghanaian man. And he also comes up with something. Let me try to summarize these characters in the shortest time possible. You bear with us that you do not have to say everything. It is just something to show you that you still have work to do. You can still look at it. Now, let me talk about this first character who applied critical and creative thinking, particularly critical thinking. John Stuart Mill, who was born in 1806 and died in 1873, was the most influential British social and political thinker of the mid-Victorian period. He left a permanent imprint on philosophy through his restatements of the principles underlying philosophical empiricism and utilitarianism. As a defender of individual liberty against state interference, and as an early advocate of women's equality, Mill continued to be of major significance. This gentleman is the son of philosopher James Mill. John Stuart really was early introduced to the philosophical radicals, or Benthamites, who actively pursued various social and political reforms along the utilitarian lines and laid down by Jeremy Bentham. After serving one term in Parliament between 1865 and 1968, Mill, or John Stuart Mill, retired to France, where he spent 6 months of every year up until his death. Now, concerning his utilitarianism or empiricism, I can underline on your screen there. Now, you remember utilitarianism is a philosophy itself that we are about to consider that deals with happiness for the greatest number. We had John Locke, who also pursued it. Now, let me just go on. His works. Mill's earliest important philosophical work, The System of Logic of 1843, contains a valuable discussion of the epistemological principles underlying empiricism. 5 years later came The Principles of Political Economy, that is 1848 from him. All this, he was trying to be utilitarian, to believe everyone can pursue joy as individual. You see, his argument is individual can pursue happiness, and that is a form of utilitarian philosophy. And you see his strength, particularly when he talks about student rights, human rights, individual liberty. Okay? He'll talk about things that are very common. He also supporting capitalism, where individual does things. But he also captures something social like environmental preservation. But basically, you can see he was trying to build on individual can pursue happiness in a manner close to René Descartes, the founder of Western philosophy, who said, cogito ergo sum, I am, therefore I exist. So he could see the individual, but utilitarianism would pursue happiness for the greatest number, but he would talk about the individual joys. Mill is mainly remembered today, however, for his contributions to ethical and social theory. in which his writings continue to exert an important influence. Now, utilitarianism in his writings in 1863 was his effort to state and defend the view that the greatest happiness of the greatest number should be the aim of the personal and legislative conduct. In other words, when you are pursuing utilitarianism as a philosophy, your focus is the greatest happiness of the greatest number. But John Stuart Mill went specifically to individual joys, individual happiness. You as an individual can pursue happiness and be happy. You can be critical and creative till you are very happy, till you pursue your full joys. And that even in parliament, legislative or parliamentary discourses should be geared towards the greatest happiness of the greatest numbers, and of the greatest number at individual level. However, he revised Bentham's version of utilitarianism by enriching the concept of pressure. Although both Mill and Bentham believed that pressure constituted happiness, Bentham had argued that all pressures, all physical or intellectuality were of equal value. So Mill argued for the superiority of the higher pressures of the mind. So you could see that once an individual is educated, you can pursue higher pressures of the mind beyond what Bentham, his predecessor in the philosophical school of utilitarianism, which pursues the greatness, the joy, the greatest happiness. It doesn't matter whether you are in the church for anything, but be happy. It doesn't matter whether you are called or not called or anything, provided you are happy there. Of course, that can be seen in a very controversial way. Not that he put it that way. I'm trying to interpret broadly. You can be a teacher, but in terms of the inner calling, you are not a teacher. You are just there to pursue your happiness as an employee. And there's a lot of it today. At the individual level, you may not tell. At the individual level, they know. But at the public level, sometimes we are not able to see who are pursuing utilitarianism at the individual level, are pursuing happiness, but at the expense of some other people. The area on liberty, 1859, was a statement of the principle that self-protection alone can justify either the state's tampering with the liberty of the individual or any personal interference with another's freedom. Mill particularly urged this point of view with respect to freedom of thought and discussion. The subjection of women, he wrote in 1869, a topic on which Mill and Harriet Taylor had corroborated in their research as early as 1832. And this is a classic essay on all aspects of female emancipation. Mill's idea of individuality. Mill was passionately dedicated to the idea of individual liberty or freedom from unnecessary societal constraints. To this end, he wrote the classic book Essay on Liberty, published in 1859. And in this book, he critically examined the nature and limit of the power which society can legitimately exercise over an individual member of that society. So he could argue that society has limitation on how you as an individual pursue your happiness from a utilitarian philosophical background. So his writings covered philosophy, political economy, politics, and whatever it came into his head to write on. Okay? And we shall continue attempting some of the key points here, maybe by mentioning. One is liberty. Mill's view on liberty, which was influenced by Joseph Priestley and Joseph Warren, is that the individual ought to be free to do as he wishes unless he harms others. Concerning economic democracy rather than capitalism, John Stuart Mill promoted economic democracy instead of capitalism. in the manner of substituting capitalist business with worker cooperatives. He says, I quote, "The form of association, however, which if humanity continues to improve, must be expected in the end to predominate, is not that which can exist between a capitalist as chief and the work people without a voice in the management, but the association of the laborers themselves on terms of equality, collectively owning the capital with which they carry on their operations and working under managers elected and removable by themselves." So you could see the work of individual in this economic democracy rather than capitalism, where the trade unionist, although he never uses the word trade union, can remove some of the people who could be working, messing up the individual happiness and joy. There is also the environment, and there is also, we have noted, student politics, and he could also talk about it.